Welcome to the Indian Nations Conservation Alliance podcast, where Native voices lead the conversation on conservation, stewardship, and our responsibilities to the lands and waters that sustain us. Across Indian country, our homelands carry stories of relationship, resilience, and knowledge passed down through generations of people who live with the land and listen to what it teaches. Through conversations with tribal producers, ranchers, conservation leaders, elders, and community partners, we share the teachings and experience that continue to guide how we care for the water, the land, and the living systems that surround us. Together across Indian country, we recognize the spirit carried in our waters, our homelands, and our ecosystems, and we honor our role as caretakers for those yet to come.
This is a conversation with Craig Ironpipe, Agriculture Director for the Blackfeet tribe, recorded for the Inca Traditional Ecological Knowledge podcast series. I'm Sarah Nickum. We spoke at his office in Browning, Montana. Despite having a deep family history and connection to the land, Craig wasn't keen to be recognized for his expertise in TEK.
Putting labels on things, it's kind of hard for me because one of the things is I just live life. And what was that little big man? And he talked about he was living Indian. How do you explain living Indian,
But this is typical for Director Ironpipe. His conservation habits are second nature, and his humble leadership style prioritizes respect and learning for the community members he serves. Above all, he believes the law of nature and principles of balance enable his people to care for themselves.
So your ecological knowledge is what's been passed down to you. And our family has been both traditional medicine people and ranchers. And so one of the biggest things that I deal with is how our younger new generation has split that. When we talk about agriculture, our people traditionally were agriculture. We harvested buffalo, we harvested berries, we harvested roots. But somewhere along the line in our root system, when we got modernized, people had put a stigma on agriculture, ranching, farming, all that kind of stuff. And I think that goes back to the colonization. You take a look at when our bands were our tribe, we went from Yellowstone National Park all the way up to Edmonton, Alberta, down to Saskatchewan River, back down into Fort Belknap, around that area, down into Laurel, Billings, back into the Yellowstone. Okay, so we encompass that whole territory. There's resources throughout that whole territory that our people survived off of, and we didn't exhaust them. So when the settlers came, they looked at us and they said we were lost. We weren't lost. We were following the season. And what Mother Nature was providing us. But we didn't all do it in big mass numbers. Our footprints were pretty light. And so that was because we didn't want to exhaust the resources there. So the thing about it now is when they put us on reservations, they confined us. And so we had to relearn how to live in with our confinement, and then within us, we've had fences that come up. We've had disputes over land, and the thing is that the population, that's exactly what it is. There used to be wild carrots, wild potatoes in our area. There was all of these resources, but we exhausted them. We exhausted them because there's too many of us in one area. And so you take a look at the grizzly bear population right now. You take a look at what's happening when they reintroduce these, like the wolves and the bears here, okay? And then federally protected them. Okay, we don't have that authority to keep them at bay per se. Okay, so what do wolves do? Wolves pack up, and when we talk about evolution, you want to see the bears are starting to pack up. in order to compete with the wolves. So these are some of the things that our people had always watched. And it was always protocols. There was always those enforcers, they went out and they made sure that there was a balance where there wasn't these guys coming in and exhausting our resources, because we compete for the same thing, the elk, the deer, the antelope, all of those resources so that we can all live together. Part about population, they're talking about how populated we are. And that goes back into our culture as well. They understood population. But we did have Mother Nature that took care of us as well. Storms. Probably one of the biggest ones that our people always talked about was the Makepi. I don't know if you've heard of that. So it's the spring storms. So when the spring storm comes in, it's that wet snow and it's kind of warm. It warms up, it cools off, it warms up. So it brought pneumonia and it killed a lot of people. It killed a lot of young animals. It killed a lot of young people, old people. So we really understood nature and where balance was. Like even during the springtime when the runoff comes, they tell you to stay out of the water. Why did they tell you to stay out of water? Well, all the bacteria that are in there, the runoffs from all the mountains and the hills that are going into those streams. The bears just came out of hibernation, but they ain't cleaning up all those dead animals or whatever was dead out there. So you have all of those rotting corpses out there that's in that runoff, So it's bringing some bad chemicals from that breakdown of tissue and all that kind of stuff. So so those are those times that you talk about. What did you listen to? Don't drink that water. You go find a spring that's coming right out of the ground for your drinking water.
A theme that's come up a lot during Craig's term as agriculture director is conflicts with wild horses and other invasive species. He talked about some of the modern issues he's seen since growing up ranching on the Blackfeet Reservation and how he hopes to create solutions that restore balance to the land and community culture.
One of the biggest threats that we have going on in our range lands right now are the feral horses. And I wouldn't call them per se feral. I'm going to say abandoned horses. There's a couple things that went on with abandoned horses. So throughout some of our generations, some of our people that had passed away, these old folks that were into ranching and farming, they had a herd of horses. And when they passed on, their younger generation didn't know the business, doesn't even want to know the business. And so them horses were just left out there getting kicked around from field to field and constantly multiplying. They multiply every 2 years. And so the thing is that there was nobody managing them. And so I remember being young that we always had horse herds, my grandpa and so every spring we got all of our horses in and we made sure that we cut our studs. And so you got to keep a bloodline. So, the knowledge of that is you don't want to be inbreeding your horses. That gives you a disadvantage of messing with their brain. They're not going to be fully functional. So you're going to have a crazy horse. Right now, the horse population is taking a big toll on our elk. So they go into their wintering areas and are pushing them out. So the calving, we're not seeing the numbers. So, that's the part where we talk about they are an invasive species as well. So as a agriculture director, we've been trying to address what the public is complaining about. There's too many horses. They're getting kicked around. They're always on the roads. They're causing accidents. Then you talk about the knapweed. The knapweed's in every yard. It's all over. So those are the two big priorities that the Agriculture Department has been in the trenches with. So we have an agriculture resource management plan, and that's what one of the biggest things was the weed control and the horse population. And so I just come in from, we got some corrals that the BIA had helped fund. They actually helped fund a horse survey. So we hired a helicopter last year. They flew around June, and we got the numbers. The mares weren't done foaling, so we've gotten rid of over 2,500 head of horses within a year, and you can't even tell, So that's the hard part, is getting families under control that don't have control of their horses. It's not we don't want to control the families, is we want to control the population of the horses, And the thing about it is you only have one behind. You can't ride 100 head of horses. So I don't know, maybe one horse for every day. In our culture, we associate with the horse a lot. When it was introduced to us, it was a tool that made us amazing horsemen, made us amazing tribe to fear because of our horse ability. And the thing about it brought us wealth because of the hunting and all of that stuff off. And that was all great, and it was controlled. And the thing about it was, when you were young during that time, there was a person, an elder, would give you a horse. And what they were trying to do was they were trying to teach you responsibility and respect, all rolled into one. They don't want to talk to you about it. That horse is going to teach it to you. And your responsibility was to get up in the morning, make sure that horse got fed, got watered, and it would bring you places that you never dreamt of. You hear of our people trekking all the way down to New Mexico, all the way down to probably Mexico as well, when they were introduced to the horse. So that was the part that's getting severed from our people. They're losing that connection. Those elders ain't teaching those people that when you're given a horse, it's actually giving you responsibility, and that respect is built in there. We're losing it. I'm constantly talking to people about that. We need to start teaching our younger people about respect, and not in a negative way, but sooner or later, all this land's going to be yours. Do you want it trashed, or do you want everything pristine the way it is right now? So what I deal with is the younger generation coming in and spreading beer cans, leaving gates open, just not really having respect for the land that feeds them. They're going up hunting, they're going up fishing, they're doing all of that kind of stuff, which is in their DNA to do that stuff. But the thing is they've lost that connection to the ground. There's the colonization. We talk about, one of the stories that I've was told over the years was about greed. I've heard younger guys shooting like 30 deer in one season. Is it greed? Is it survival? I don't know what they were doing. I just heard the story of 30 deer for one guy. Okay, there's a balance in life of all of our creatures and all of our animals and our plants and stuff like that there's a balance to it. We're totally out of balance. You take a look at our dogs, for instance, right now, the dog population. The dog population, it's connected to our culture, but there had always been a balance. You can't have too much of one thing. If you think about these big gatherings that they had during the summers, during periods of our time, they had somebody that divvied the meat out, and divvied the resources out. So everybody got to eat, and that's what life is really about. There's only three things that we really need: air, water, and food. The other stuff can go away, but that's what Mother Nature's teaching us right now. We're going to start having famines. And the part is, there's got to be an order where that person and leaders have the right temperament, the knowledge, the understanding that we have a divided portion that everybody survives, so and that part's going away. There's a lot of jealousy that has happened. And we always looked at our culture and say, that was our teaching, was nature. And one day I just was walking through the feedlot and it was on my mind. Where did this jealousy come from? And my kids have a bunch of dogs. Anyway, this little dog comes running up. It's in the winter, checking my cows in the feedlot. This dog runs up, and I'm in that thought. And so I reach down and I'm petting this dog. And here comes the rest of them. They were all fighting for my attention. And I said, that's where jealousy come from. Those dogs. The colonizational part, back then, if you take a look at our reservation, how many fences there are now. That's where jealousy and greed came about. Okay, before they always used to run in common. Every family got out and they worked. They knew that their animals had to move. So one family was always, or all the families worked together. And then, like, even getting wood for the winter, harvesting hay, it was all a communal thing that happened, and that's where we're getting severed from. I'm trying to bring that back. We got a field out here, and I called it the Field of Dreams. So the tribe had given the agriculture department 2 fields. And I called the one out of Heartbeat the Field of Dreams. So it's 60 acres. We fenced it off into 3 parts. Like I said, the Bureau gave us money, and it was basically focused on controlling the horse population. I talked to them about, there used to be communal krells, government krells, they called them. And so it was a neutral area for somebody to go do their business. And so that's what I'm bringing back, is to where if there's a dispute, there's a common ground where it could be settled, where the jealousy and all that stuff don't matter. You could be jealous, you could be mad, you can be whatever, but we're going to sit here in this area where nobody has the real control of it, to where we can resolve our differences in a good way. In that field, there's going to be gardens, greenhouse we're looking for. That's that field. It'll have, the dream is to have a processing facility where we can have a classroom. We could teach people about all the herbs, all the plants that they're growing, how it all functions. And then a canning room and a storage room, that it's all USDA approved. So whatever you don't eat, they have a new store out there. They can sell it to their store. They can sell it to the rest of the public. that it's certified. Okay, so the other field that's going to be set up there is for protein. So protein, we're talking about steers, butchering meat, chickens, for eggs, pigs, all of that kind of stuff that our people culturally have inclined into through the agriculture world because of the buffalo disappearing. We want to talk about the buffalo next.
In my time knowing Director Ironpipe, he does not lack ideas for helping his community. He regularly turns to the ranchers for input and collective action to support neighbors during drought and other challenges the group faces. Even for me, as a non-native resident in the Blackfeet community, he shared his knowledge and wisdom to become a better neighbor and caretaker of the land. As the future history of his people unfolds, it's vigilance and resilience that will carry the community through nature's constant changes.
So the ecological part for our ranch, where we're at right now, we're in the heart of that country where our creation stories came from, where there's a lot of power that came from those mountains in our area. Growing up, I never used to bring anything. We'd get up horseback, daylight till dark. It was a lot of us boys. We never had backpacks. We never had water bottles. There was no fences, and we rode everywhere. And we ate off of the land. And you think about that, and I don't remember anybody teaching me that. It would be like a cow right now, just kind of a visual for you. When that cow has a calf, that calf is eating next to that cow wherever she goes. And she'll have sweet spots. And that calf learns that. And I think that's how, because I don't ever remember conversations. We just read along our parents or grandparents. I got a moose that comes in every year now. I had a moose that came in several years ago, and we're kind of a safe haven where we're at. I've had a soil scientist come out. He said, your ecosystem is amazing here, how many willows species that you have. And then the grasses, when we do range inventories there, the forbs, the grasses, all of that kind of stuff. And it's still there. I didn't exhaust it. And it's just something we do. We just live, but it's a generational teaching by just doing, I guess, So there would be a conversation here and there when we start talking about knowledge and colleges and all that kind of stuff. Then you have to get into terminology, and I'm starting to get used to it, but that's that part. I'm living it, and it's hard to explain it. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? I just do it where, and then I started thinking, oh, I do have that knowledge. Here, let me explain it to you. This is why I do it. And these are the results of it, And the thing about the practices that I've done with the Western world as well, this drought, I'm okay because I've taken care. I've been practicing these practices over 25 years. So I think with all the knowledge that we're going to deal with is, who knows what's going to happen with, they say global warming doesn't exist. I don't care what you say, global warming, evolution, whatever. It's always been there, it's in our science. And so the thing is it's adapting to it. How do we adapt to it? To be continued.
Thank you for listening to the Inca podcast. This program is supported through grant funding from the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, the Rural Climate Smart Initiative, and the Indigenous Grazing Lands Coalition. These efforts help support grassroots producers, tribal ranchers, and the conservation partners working to strengthen stewardship across Indian country as a whole. The views expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the USDA. To learn more about Inca and our work, visit us online and join us for the next conversation. Thank you.